morning sun cast long shadows across the manicured grounds of the Hartfield estate, but inside the veterinary clinic's waiting room, tension hung thick in the air. Dr. Victoria Hayes had seen countless challenging cases in her 15 years of practice, but nothing quite prepared her for the call she received at dawn. Marcus Hartfield, the real estate mogul whose name commanded respect across 3 states, needed help with his Rottweiler. And he needed it now. Victoria arrived at the estate within the hour, her medical bag clutched tightly as she walked through the ornate iron gates. The mansion loomed before her, all glass and stone, a testament to wealth that most people could only dream of. But she wasn't here to admire architecture. She was here because a dog's life hung in the balance, and apparently, so did several people's jobs. Marcus met her at the door himself, which surprised her. Men of his stature usually sent assistants. He was tall, probably in his late 30s, with dark hair graying at the temples, and eyes that carried the weight of someone who'd fought for everything he had. Despite his expensive suit, he looked exhausted. "Dr. Hayes, thank you for coming so quickly," he said, his voice rough with worry. "I'm at my wit's end. Thor has been with me for 7 years since he was a puppy. He's never been like this." Victoria followed him through marble hallways adorned with abstract art that probably cost more than her entire clinic. "Tell me what's been happening, Mr. Hartfield." "Call me Marcus, please." He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture that seemed uncharacteristic for someone so composed in business negotiations. 3 weeks ago, Thor started showing aggression. Not toward me, never toward me, but toward everyone else. My housekeeper quit after he cornered her in the kitchen. The groundskeeper won't come near the house anymore. I've had 4 trainers here, including the best behaviorist in the state. They all left after less than a day. They reached a set of double doors at the end of a long corridor. Behind them, Victoria could hear low, threatening growls that made her instincts scream caution. "The last trainer said Thor should be put down," Marcus continued, his jaw tightening. "Said he was beyond help, that he'd become dangerous, but I can't accept that. There has to be another way." Victoria studied the man before her. Beneath the billionaire exterior was someone genuinely desperate to save his companion. "Let me be clear, Marcus. If Thor poses a genuine danger, I won't sugarcoat my assessment, but I also won't give up without trying everything first." He nodded, gratitude flickering across his features. "That's all I ask." When Marcus opened the doors, Victoria's breath caught. The room had been converted into a makeshift containment area, furniture pushed to the walls, expensive rugs rolled up. In the center, a massive Rottweiler stood alert, his black and tan coat gleaming with health, his dark eyes fixed on them with unsettling intensity. This wasn't a sick dog. This was a guardian who'd decided the whole world was a threat. "Thor," Marcus said softly, stepping into the room. The dog's demeanor shifted instantly. His tail began a slow wag, his posture relaxed. He padded over to Marcus, pressing against his leg with obvious affection. "He loves you," Victoria observed, remaining in the doorway. "And I love him. He's been my constant companion through the worst years of my life. When my wife..." Marcus paused, pain crossing his face. "When Catherine died 3 years ago, Thor was the only one who seemed to understand. He'd sit with me for hours when I couldn't sleep, couldn't work, couldn't function." Victoria's heart constricted. She'd read about Catherine Hartfield's death in the papers, a car accident that had shocked the community. "I'm sorry for your loss." Marcus acknowledged this with a slight nod, his hand resting on Thor's massive head. "The problem started after I came back from a business trip to Chicago. I was gone for 2 weeks, the longest I'd ever left him. When I returned, he was different." "Who took care of him while you were away?" "My assistant, Jeremy. He's been with me for 8 years, and Thor has always been fine with him. But when I got back, Thor wouldn't let Jeremy within 10 feet of me, or anyone else, for that matter." Victoria moved slowly into the room, keeping her movements non-threatening. Thor's attention snapped to her immediately, a low rumble starting in his chest, but she'd worked with aggressive dogs before. She knew the language of canine communication, the subtle signals that meant the difference between assessment and attack. "Easy, boy," she murmured, not making eye contact, keeping her body angled away. "I'm not here to hurt anyone." For several minutes, she simply stood there, allowing Thor to get used to her presence. Marcus watched anxiously, ready to intervene if necessary. But gradually, Thor's growling subsided. He didn't approach her, didn't relax entirely, but he accepted her existence in his space. "That's more than any of the trainers managed," Marcus said quietly. Victoria spent the next hour examining Thor. Not physically yet, but behaviorally. She watched how he moved, how he responded to Marcus's commands, how his attention never strayed far from his owner. She noted the way Thor positioned himself between Marcus and the door, how his ears swiveled at every sound from elsewhere in the house, how his body remained tense despite Marcus's soothing presence. "This isn't aggression," Victoria finally said. "It's protection taken to an extreme. Thor isn't trying to hurt people, he's trying to keep them away from you. The question is, why?" Marcus frowned. "What do you mean?" "Dogs don't develop this kind of protective behavior without reason. Something happened while you were gone. Or something's been happening that you haven't noticed. Thor perceives a threat, and he's doing what his instincts tell him to do. Guard his pack leader at all costs, but there's no threat. Everything's been normal, routine." Victoria pulled out her notebook. "Let's go through everything systematically. Who has access to this house? Who's been here in the past month? Any unusual visitors, workers, deliveries?" As Marcus began listing names and dates, Victoria made detailed notes. Somewhere in this information was the key to understanding Thor's transformation. She'd seen cases like this before. Dogs picking up on dangers their humans couldn't perceive, reacting to threats that seemed invisible, but were all too real. An hour later, as Victoria prepared to leave with a plan for gradual desensitization therapy, Marcus walked her to the door. "Do you really think you can help him?" "I think Thor is trying to tell you something," Victoria replied. "And I think we need to listen. I'll be back tomorrow to start working with him. In the meantime, I want you to do something for me. Anything. Pay attention to Thor's reactions. Note who or what triggers the most intense responses. Dogs see the world differently than we do. Sometimes they notice things we miss." Marcus agreed, though skepticism lingered in his eyes. As Victoria drove away from the estate, she couldn't shake the feeling that this case was more complicated than a simple behavioral issue. Thor was trying to protect Marcus from something. But what? The answer would come sooner than anyone expected, and from the most unlikely source imaginable. Because 3 days later, a small girl with tangled auburn hair and patches on her worn jacket would slip through a gap in the estate's fence, searching for a place to hide from troubles of her own. And when she stumbled upon Thor in the garden, when the fearsome Rottweiler that had terrified grown men met the frightened child who had nowhere else to go, everything would change. But that moment was still ahead, waiting in the wings of fate. For now, Victoria had work to do, a mystery to unravel, and a dog to save from a fate he didn't deserve. She just didn't know yet that saving Thor would mean uncovering secrets that reached far deeper than anyone imagined. Secrets that would shake the foundations of Marcus Hartfield's carefully constructed world. Word count. 1,426 words. I need to add more content to reach the 1,600 word requirement. Let me continue. That evening, as Victoria reviewed her notes in her small apartment above the clinic, her phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Thor refused dinner, just stares at the east windows. This isn't normal for him. Victoria frowned at the message. The east side of the property. That detail stuck with her. She texted back, "What's on the east side of your property?" The response came quickly. Guest house, empty for months. Also the service entrance staff use. Victoria's instincts prickled. She'd learned long ago to trust a dog's senses over human assumptions. Check the guest house tomorrow. Don't go alone. She set down her phone and stared at the ceiling of her modest home, so different from the opulent estate she'd visited that morning. Marcus Hartfield lived in a different world, one of wealth and power and influence. Yet his love for Thor was genuine, uncomplicated by his status. It reminded her why she'd become a veterinarian in the first place. The pure, honest bond between humans and animals transcended everything else. Tomorrow, she'd return to the estate and begin the real work. But tonight, she couldn't shake the image of Thor's intelligent eyes, watching, waiting, trying so hard to communicate something his human couldn't understand. Whatever secret the Rottweiler was guarding, Victoria was determined to uncover it before it was too late. Victoria returned to the Hartfield estate early the next morning, her truck loaded with equipment for Thor's behavioral therapy. But as she pulled through the gates, she noticed something unusual. 2 police cars parked near the main house, their lights off, but their presence unmistakable. Marcus met her at the door, his face drawn with tension. "I took your advice. Had my head of security check the guest house at dawn. And? Someone's been living there, squatting essentially. They got in through a basement window we didn't know was broken. Left behind food wrappers, a sleeping bag, some clothes." He paused, his expression darkening. "The police are processing it now. But here's what bothers me. Whoever it was had been watching the main house. There were binoculars, notebooks with my schedule written down, photos of me taken with a telephoto lens." Victoria's stomach tightened. Thor knew. That's what he's been reacting to. It appears so. The police think it might be connected to a business deal that went south 6 months ago. I acquired a property portfolio from a man named Gerald Brennan. Forced the sale, really, when I discovered he'd been violating zoning laws. He made threats, but I didn't think... Marcus shook his head. "I didn't take them seriously enough. Has Brennan been located?" "Not yet. He seems to have disappeared. But the police found evidence suggesting he'd been staying in my guest house for at least 2 weeks. Marcus looked toward the interior of the house, where Thor's distant barking could be heard. "My security system failed me, but Thor didn't. He's been trying to warn me all along, and I thought he was the problem." Victoria felt a surge of vindication for the loyal Rottweiler, but also concern. "Marcus, if someone was that close, planning something, I know. The police have increased patrols around the property. I've also hired private security." He met her eyes, and she saw genuine fear there, not for himself, but for what might have happened. "Thor may have saved my life." They walked together toward Thor's room, where the dog had been kept overnight. When Marcus opened the door, Thor bounded out with more energy than Victoria had seen the day before. His tail wagged furiously as he greeted Marcus, and for the first time, when Victoria approached, Thor didn't growl. He sniffed her hand cautiously, then allowed her to scratch behind his ears. "He knows the threat is gone," Victoria said softly, "or at least diminished. Dogs are remarkable that way. They sense changes in their environment that we can't perceive." Over the next 2 hours, Victoria worked with Thor, testing his responses, gauging his temperament now that the immediate danger had passed. The transformation was remarkable. While still protective of Marcus, Thor no longer showed the extreme aggression that had characterized his recent behavior. He accepted treats from Victoria's hand, followed basic commands, even tolerated the presence of Marcus's assistant Jeremy when he tentatively entered the room. "I can't believe this is the same dog," Jeremy said, keeping a respectful distance but clearly relieved. "Mr. Hartfield, I'm so sorry for suggesting—" "Don't apologize," Marcus interrupted. "You were scared. Thor was frightening. I understand." He looked at Victoria with something like wonder. But Dr. Hayes saw what no one else did. She listened to what Thor was trying to say. Victoria felt warmth spread through her chest at the praise, though she tried to remain professional. "Thor is an exceptional dog with exceptional instincts. The real question now is whether this behavioral pattern will continue, or if we need ongoing therapy to help him distinguish between genuine threats and normal interactions." As if in answer, Thor suddenly stiffened, his attention fixed on the windows overlooking the garden. A low growl rumbled in his chest, not the aggressive snarl from before, but something different. Alert, concerned, but not hostile. Marcus immediately tensed. "What is it, boy?" Victoria moved to the window, peering out at the expansive grounds. At first, she saw nothing unusual, just perfectly maintained lawns, ornamental trees, flower beds arranged with geometric precision. Then movement caught her eye near the hedge that bordered the eastern property line. A small figure darted between the bushes, quick and furtive. A child. "There's someone out there," Victoria said. "A little girl, I think." Marcus was already pulling out his phone to call security, but Victoria stopped him with a hand on his arm. "Wait. Look at her." Through the window, they watched as the child emerged more fully into view. She couldn't have been more than 7 or 8 years old, wearing jeans with holes in the knees and a jacket several sizes too large. Her auburn hair hung in tangled curls around a face smudged with dirt, but it was her expression that struck Victoria most. Pure, desperate fear. Thor's growl had faded. Now he whined softly, his tail moving in uncertain wags. He pawed at the door, clearly wanting to go outside. "She's scared," Victoria said quietly, "and she's alone. Marcus, don't call security yet. Let me handle this." Marcus looked torn between concern and curiosity. "You don't know who she is or why she's here?" "No, but I know a frightened child when I see one. And I know Thor's reaction. He's not perceiving her as a threat, he's concerned for her." Before Marcus could respond, Victoria was moving, heading for the door that led to the garden. Thor immediately followed, and after a moment's hesitation, so did Marcus. They stepped out into the cool morning air, the dew still glistening on the grass. The girl had moved closer to the house. Though she seemed unaware of being observed, she was focused on something in her hands. A small bundle wrapped in what looked like a torn t-shirt. As Victoria, Marcus, and Thor approached quietly, they heard her voice, soft and pleading. "Please don't die. Please, please, please. I'll find help, I promise. Just hold on." Victoria's heart constricted. Whatever the child held, it was clearly an injured animal. She'd seen this before. Children forming fierce attachments to creatures as vulnerable as themselves, recognizing kindred spirits in their helplessness. "Hello," Victoria called out gently, not wanting to startle the girl, but needing to make their presence known. The child's head snapped up, her eyes wide with panic. She was perhaps 8 years old, with freckles across her nose, and the kind of thinness that spoke of missed meals rather than genetics. When she saw Thor, she froze completely, her body going rigid with terror. But Thor didn't bark, or growl, or show any aggression. Instead, he did something that surprised everyone present. He sat down, his massive body settling onto the grass, and he waited. His tail swept back and forth slowly, and he let out a soft whine, the kind of sound he made when Marcus came home after being away, when he was happy and excited, but trying to be calm. "It's okay," Victoria said, taking a slow step forward. "No one's going to hurt you. My name is Victoria, and I'm a veterinarian, an animal doctor. Is something wrong with your pet?" The girl's eyes darted between Victoria, Marcus, and Thor, clearly calculating whether to run. But the bundle in her arms shifted, and a weak, pitiful meow emerged. A kitten. "She's hurt," the girl finally whispered, her voice cracking. "I found her by the road. Someone hit her with a car and just left her there. Her leg is all wrong and she won't eat, and I don't know what to do." Tears began streaming down her dirty cheeks. "Please, I don't have any money, but please help her. I'll do anything." Victoria's professional instincts kicked in immediately. "May I see her?" The girl hesitated, then slowly extended her arms. Victoria moved forward carefully, aware that Thor had risen and was walking alongside her. When they reached the child, Thor did something extraordinary. He lay down at her feet, placing his large head on his paws, making himself as non-threatening as possible. The girl's attention was drawn to the Rottweiler, wonder replacing fear in her expression. "He's so big," she breathed. "His name is Thor," Victoria said, gently taking the bundle from the girl's arms. "And he's very gentle with people who need help." As Victoria unwrapped the makeshift bandage, she found a small calico kitten, barely 8 weeks old, with a badly broken front leg and signs of dehydration. The injury was at least a day old, maybe more, and infection was already setting in. Without treatment soon, the kitten wouldn't survive. "What's your name, sweetheart?" Marcus asked, crouching down to the girl's level. His voice was surprisingly soft, lacking the authority it usually carried. The girl looked at him warily. "Penelope, but everyone calls me Penny." "Penny, where are your parents?" The question hung in the air for a long moment. Penny's gaze dropped to the ground, and when she spoke again, her voice was barely audible. "Don't have any. I was staying with my aunt, but she said she couldn't keep me anymore, said I was too much trouble." Fresh tears welled up. "I didn't mean to trespass. I was just looking for somewhere safe to sleep. And then I found the kitten, and I thought maybe if I could save her." Maybe. She didn't finish the sentence, but Victoria understood. Maybe if she could save something, she wouldn't feel so powerless herself. "Penny," Victoria said firmly, "I can help this kitten, but we need to go to my clinic right now. Will you come with me?" The girl nodded eagerly, hope lighting up her face, but then doubt crept in. "But I don't have money." "I said that already." Victoria smiled. "Sometimes the best payment is just knowing we did the right thing. Come on." As they walked back toward the house, Thor stayed close to Penny, matching his pace to her shorter strides. The girl reached out tentatively, her small hand touching his head, and Thor's tail wagged harder. Marcus watched this interaction with an expression Victoria couldn't quite read. Surprise, certainly, but also something deeper, something that looked like recognition. "Dr. Hayes," Marcus said quietly as they reached the house, "I'd like to come with you to the clinic. And Penny, after we take care of your kitten, we need to talk about where you'll stay tonight. You're not going back to wherever you've been sleeping." Penny looked up at him, suspicion and hope warring in her young face. "Why would you care?" Marcus met her gaze steadily. "Because Thor cares, and I've learned to trust his judgment about people." The clinic was quiet when Victoria pulled into the parking lot, Marcus following in his sleek black sedan with Penny and Thor as passengers. Inside the vehicle, an unlikely bond had already begun forming. The billionaire, the homeless child, and the Rottweiler who'd brought them together. Victoria had watched through her rearview mirror as Penny's hand rested on Thor's massive head, the dog's presence seeming to calm fears that words couldn't touch. Victoria's assistant, Monica, looked up from the reception desk with wide eyes as the unusual group entered. "Dr. Hayes, I wasn't expecting—" "Emergency case," Victoria interrupted, already moving toward the examination room. "Monica, prep surgery too. We have a kitten with a compound fracture and possible sepsis." The next 2 hours were intense. While Victoria worked to stabilize the kitten, Marcus sat with Penny in the waiting room. Through the examination room door, Victoria could hear their conversation during brief moments when she paused to let Monica handle preparations. "What's her name?" Marcus asked gently. "I haven't named her yet," Penny replied. "Didn't want to get attached if she was going to die." That's a very grown-up way of thinking, but also very sad. A pause. Then Penny's voice, smaller. "Everything I love goes away. My mom, my dad, my aunt who promised she'd take care of me. I thought maybe if I didn't name her, it wouldn't hurt so much when she left too." Victoria's hand stilled for just a moment over the tiny patient. The raw pain in that child's voice was almost unbearable. She glanced through the window to see Marcus looking equally affected, his composed businessman facade cracking to reveal genuine emotion. "I understand that feeling," Marcus said quietly. "I lost someone very important to me too. Someone I loved more than anything, and for a long time, I thought the answer was to not let anyone else get close, to keep everyone at a distance so I wouldn't hurt again. Did it work? No. It just made me lonely. And it made Thor lonely too, I think. He knew I was shutting everyone out, and he tried to protect me from a world I was already hiding from." Marcus shifted in his seat. "But here's what I'm learning, Penny. Sometimes the bravest thing we can do is let ourselves care, even when we're scared, even when it might hurt." Penny was quiet for a long moment. "What was her name?" "The person you lost? Catherine. She was my wife. I'm sorry." "Thank you." "What were your parents' names?" "My mom was Annie. My dad left before I was born, so I never knew him." Penny's voice grew stronger. "But my mom was amazing. She used to sing to me every night, and she made the best chocolate chip cookies, and she always said I could be anything I wanted when I grew up." "What happened to her?" "She got sick. Cancer. She fought really hard, but—" Penny's voice cracked. "She died 2 years ago. I was 6. Victoria had to pause her work, blinking back tears. Monica noticed and squeezed her shoulder sympathetically. They continued in silence, focused on saving the tiny life before them, a life that suddenly represented so much more than one injured kitten. When Victoria finally emerged from the examination room 3 hours later, exhausted but satisfied, she found an unexpected scene. Marcus had ordered food, not just sandwiches, but a proper meal from what looked like an expensive restaurant. Penny was eating with the desperate hunger of someone who hadn't had a decent meal in days, while Thor lay beside her chair, his eyes watchful but content. "She's going to make it," Victoria announced, and Penny's face transformed with joy so pure it was almost painful to witness. "Really? She's going to be okay?" "Her leg was badly broken and the infection was serious, but we've stabilized her. She'll need to stay here for at least a week, maybe 2, with daily monitoring and medication. But yes, with proper care, she should recover fully." Penny launched herself at Victoria, wrapping thin arms around her waist in a fierce hug. "Thank you, thank you, thank you. You saved her." Victoria returned the embrace, feeling the child's ribs too prominent beneath her shirt. When Penny pulled back, Victoria crouched down to her eye level. "Penny, honey, we need to talk about you now. Where have you been staying?" The joy faded from Penny's face, replaced by wariness. "Different places. Sometimes the park, sometimes empty buildings. I'm okay." "You're not okay," Marcus said firmly, but not unkindly. "You're 8 years old, living on the streets alone. That's not safe, and it's not right." "I'm almost 9, Penny protested. "And what am I supposed to do? My aunt didn't want me. Foster care is—" She shuddered. "I heard stories. Kids who disappear into the system and never come out. At least on my own. I have control." Victoria exchanged glances with Marcus. They both knew she couldn't stay on the streets, but they also understood her fear. The foster system, while necessary, wasn't always kind to children who'd already been through trauma. "Penny," Marcus said slowly, as if the idea was forming even as he spoke. "What if there was another option? What if you stayed with me, at least temporarily, while we figure out something more permanent?" Victoria's head snapped toward him in surprise. Penny looked equally shocked. "Why would you do that?" the girl asked suspiciously. "You don't even know me." "You're right. I don't. But I know you cared enough about an injured kitten to risk everything trying to save her. I know you're brave and resourceful and clearly smart. And I know Thor likes you, which means more to me than you might think." Marcus leaned forward, his expression earnest. "I have a huge house with more rooms than I know what to do with. I have resources. And honestly, Penny, I think maybe we could help each other." "How could I possibly help you?" Marcus glanced at Thor, then back at Penny. "You remind me that there are things more important than business deals and money. You remind me of what Catherine always said, that a house is just a building until you fill it with people worth caring about." Penny bit her lip, clearly torn between hope and self-protection. "What if your wife's family doesn't want some random kid around? What if—" Catherine's parents passed away years ago. She was an only child. There's no one to object except me, and I'm not objecting. I'm offering. Marcus paused. "Look, I'm not saying this would be easy. I don't know anything about raising children. I work long hours. I travel sometimes. But I could hire people to help, a nanny, a tutor, whatever you need. You'd have your own room, regular meals, safety, and you could visit your kitten here every single day until she's well enough to come home." "Home," Penny repeated softly, as if testing the word's weight. Victoria watched this exchange with a mixture of admiration and concern. Marcus's offer was generous, even noble, but taking in a traumatized child wasn't like adopting a puppy. It required commitment, patience, and resources beyond just financial ones. Still, she could see the sincerity in his eyes. This wasn't some impulsive gesture. It was a man recognizing a chance to fill the emptiness in his life while saving a child who desperately needed saving. "Marcus," Victoria said carefully, "this is incredibly kind, but there are legal considerations. Child services, background checks, custody arrangements." "I'm aware. I'll have my lawyers handle it first thing Monday morning. In the meantime, Penny needs somewhere safe to sleep tonight, tomorrow, the next night." He looked at the girl. "I'm not promising perfection, Penny. I'm just promising that you won't have to be alone anymore." Penny's eyes filled with tears. Thor, sensing her distress, stood and pushed his head under her hand, offering comfort the way he'd learned to do for Marcus during his darkest days. The girl buried her face in the dog's fur, her small shoulders shaking. "Okay," she finally whispered. "Okay, I'll try. But if it doesn't work out, then we'll figure out something else together," Marcus assured her. "You won't be cast aside again. I promise you that. Victoria felt her own eyes stinging. She'd seen remarkable things in her career. Animals surviving impossible odds, bonds forming between unlikely companions. But this felt different. This felt like watching broken pieces find their way back together in a pattern that somehow made more sense than the original design. There's one condition, Penny said, pulling back from Thor and wiping her eyes. When my kitten is better, she comes home with us. Both of us. Marcus smiled, the expression transforming his usually stern face. I wouldn't have it any other way. Though I should warn you, I've never had a cat before. You'll have to teach me. I can do that. Penny managed a small smile in return. And maybe I can help take care of Thor too? If that's okay? Thor would love that. In fact, I think he's been waiting for someone exactly like you to come along. As if understanding the conversation, Thor's tail wagged harder, and he licked Penny's hand with obvious affection. The sight of the enormous Rottweiler, who just days ago had been considered dangerous and unmanageable, being so gentle with this fragile child, was almost miraculous. But Victoria's professional instincts were already anticipating complications. She'd seen enough of human nature to know that good intentions didn't always translate into sustainable solutions. Marcus was a billionaire accustomed to solving problems with money and authority. Penny was a traumatized child who'd learned not to trust promises. And between them was Thor, the unexpected bridge. But even the strongest bridge could only bear so much weight. I'll need to see Penny regularly, Victoria said. For the kitten's care, of course, but also just to check in. Make sure the adjustment is going smoothly for everyone. Of course. Marcus agreed readily. You're welcome at the estate any time. As they prepared to leave the clinic, Monica pulled Victoria aside. Dr. Hayes, are you sure about this? I mean, it's wonderful, but it's complicated. Victoria finished. I know. But sometimes the right thing is also the complicated thing, and something tells me these three need each other more than any of them realize. What Victoria didn't say, what she could only feel, was that this situation was more fragile than Marcus understood. She'd seen the way his business assistant Jeremy had looked nervous that morning, had noticed the tension in Marcus's voice when he mentioned the property deal with Gerald Brennan. There were undercurrents here, dangers that hadn't fully resolved just because the immediate threat had been discovered. And then there was Penny herself, a child who'd survived on her own through cunning and courage, but who carried wounds that wouldn't heal overnight. Integrating her into Marcus's world of wealth and privilege would require more than just good intentions. It would require patience, understanding, and the kind of consistent love that neither Marcus nor Penny had experienced in years. As Victoria watched them drive away, Marcus at the wheel, Penny in the passenger seat with Thor's massive head resting on her lap, she felt both hope and trepidation. They looked like a family, or at least the beginning of one, but families weren't built in a day, and the road ahead would test all of them in ways they couldn't yet imagine. Still, she thought, if anyone could navigate those challenges, it would be this unlikely trio. After all, they'd already accomplished the impossible, taming a Rottweiler everyone else had given up on, simply by recognizing that his aggression was love turned desperate. Maybe that same principle would apply to healing the wounds they all carried. Maybe love, in all its forms, was the answer after all. The first week of Penny living at the Hartfield estate unfolded with unexpected grace. Marcus had converted one of the guest suites into a bedroom fit for a child, not with ostentatious displays of wealth, but with thoughtful touches that showed he'd actually listened to her. Books lined shelves at her height, art supplies covered a desk by the window, and a comfortable reading nook was positioned where afternoon sunlight streamed through. Thor had essentially moved into her room, sleeping at the foot of her bed each night, his presence a constant reassurance. Victoria visited daily, ostensibly to check on the kitten's progress, which was remarkable, but really to ensure the human dynamics were working. She watched Penny slowly unfurl like a flower finally given proper soil and sunlight. The child was still guarded, still prone to testing boundaries as if expecting them to dissolve. But moments of genuine happiness were becoming more frequent. Marcus, too, was transforming. The cold efficiency he brought to business dealings softened around Penny. He came home earlier, scheduled fewer trips, and Victoria often found him in the kitchen attempting to make the chocolate chip cookies Penny had mentioned her mother used to bake. They were terrible at first, burned or underdone, never quite right. But Penny would eat them anyway, and Marcus would promise to do better next time. It was during one of these visits, 10 days after Penny had arrived, that everything nearly fell apart. Victoria was in the clinic's recovery room with Penny, showing her how to carefully change the kitten's bandages. The tiny calico, whom Penny had finally named Hope, was healing beautifully, her leg setting properly, her energy returning. Penny's face glowed with pride as she gently stroked Hope's soft fur. "Dr. Victoria?" Penny asked quietly. "Do you think Marcus really means it, that I can stay?" "I think he absolutely means it, sweetheart." "Why do you ask?" Penny's expression clouded. "Because I heard him on the phone yesterday. He was talking to someone about me, about arrangements and paperwork, and the person on the other end was getting loud. I could hear them even though Marcus was in his office. They were saying things like liability and what were you thinking and this could ruin everything." Victoria's stomach tightened. Did Marcus seem upset? He seemed angry. He told whoever it was that I was staying and they needed to deal with it. But what if they convince him I'm too much trouble? What if... The clinic door burst open, cutting off Penny's words. Marcus strode in, his face pale and tight with barely controlled fury. Behind him came a woman Victoria didn't recognize. Mid-50s, expensively dressed, with the kind of sharp features that suggested she rarely smiled. "Marcus, what's wrong?" Victoria asked, immediately standing. "This is Margaret Chen, my head legal counsel," Marcus said, his voice clipped. "Tell them what you just told me, Margaret." The lawyer's expression was professionally neutral, but Victoria could see discomfort beneath the polish. "Mr. Hartfield, perhaps we should discuss this privately." "No. Penny deserves to hear this. So does Dr. Hayes." Marcus's jaw was clenched so tightly Victoria worried he might crack a tooth. "Tell them about Gerald Brennan," Margaret sighed. "We've been investigating Mr. Brennan's activities, trying to locate him and understand the full scope of his surveillance of Mr. Hartfield. This morning, we received information from a private investigator that changes everything." "Changes what?" Victoria demanded. Margaret looked directly at Penny, and her professional mask slipped for just a moment, revealing something like pity. "Gerald Brennan is your father." The words hung in the air like a physical thing. Penny went completely still, her hand frozen on Hope's fur. "What?" "Your mother, Annie Brennan, married Gerald when you were a baby. He legally adopted you, making him your father in the eyes of the law. After she died, custody should have transferred to him, but he was already in financial trouble, already beginning his descent into obsession with revenge against Marcus. He left you with your aunt rather than take responsibility. But my aunt said she couldn't keep me." Penny's voice was small, confused. "Your aunt contacted Gerald 3 weeks ago, telling him she couldn't afford to care for you anymore. Instead of stepping up, he saw an opportunity. He told her to turn you over to the state, but you ran before that could happen." Margaret's expression was grim. "Mr. Brennan knew you were homeless and looking for shelter. We believe he was watching you, waiting." Victoria felt ice in her veins. "Waiting for what?" Marcus answered, his voice rough with barely suppressed rage. "Waiting for her to come to my property, waiting to use his own daughter as a tool in his revenge plot against me." The pieces clicked together in Victoria's mind with horrible clarity. "He knew you'd help her. He was counting on your compassion, My guilt over Catherine's death," Marcus finished bitterly. "He researched me thoroughly. He knew I'd built walls around myself, knew Thor was acting as my guardian. But he also knew that a child in genuine need might get through those defenses. He engineered the whole thing." Penny's face had drained of all color. "The kitten," she whispered. "Hope. Did he hurt her? Did he break her leg just so I would—" "We don't know," Margaret said carefully. "We may never know. But the timing is suspicious. The kitten was injured near your father's last known location, and you found her in a place that would naturally lead you toward the Hartfield estate." Victoria felt sick. The idea that someone would harm an innocent animal and manipulate their own child as part of an elaborate revenge scheme was almost incomprehensible, but she'd seen enough of human cruelty to know it was possible. Penny stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. So I'm a weapon? Something he used? Her voice was rising, panic and betrayal warring in her expression. And now that you know, I have to leave, right? Because I'm connected to someone who wants to hurt you. And keeping me around is a liability. And stop. Marcus's voice cut through her spiral with quiet authority. He moved toward her, then crouched down so they were eye level. Penny, look at me, please. She did, tears streaming down her face. Your father, and I use that term loosely because a real father would never do what he did, may have planned for you to come to my property. He may have even engineered the circumstances. But here's what he didn't plan for, what he couldn't have predicted. You. I don't understand. He expected a pawn, a tool he could manipulate. But you're not that, Penny. You're brave and kind and resilient. You risked everything to save an injured kitten, not because someone told you to, but because that's who you are. You won Thor's trust, not through manipulation, but through genuine connection. And you've made me remember what it feels like to care about someone again. To have something worth protecting beyond just money and property. Marcus's voice grew stronger, more certain. Whatever Gerald Brennan planned, it doesn't matter now. Because I'm not letting you go. Not because of some revenge plot. Not because of legal technicalities. Not for any reason. You're staying, and we're going to make this official and permanent. And if your biological father tries to use you as leverage, he's going to learn exactly how protective I can be when it comes to people I love. The last word hung in the air. Marcus seemed surprised he'd said it, but he didn't take it back. Penny stared at him, her young face struggling to process everything. You love me? I do, Marcus said simply. I know it's fast. I know it doesn't make conventional sense, but yes. You and Thor are my family now, and I protect my family. But what if my father comes back? What if he tries to take me or hurt you because of me? That's why I'm here, Margaret interjected, her professional demeanor returning. Mr. Hartfield has instructed me to pursue full legal custody. Given your father's abandonment, his criminal behavior, and the evidence of his intentions, I'm confident we can terminate his parental rights. It will take time, but I'm very good at my job. Victoria, who had been watching this unfold with her heart in her throat, finally found her voice. Penny, honey, I know this is scary, but you're not alone in this. You have Marcus, you have Thor, and you have me. We're all here, and we're not going anywhere. Penny looked between the three adults, then down at Hope sleeping peacefully in her recovery crate, blissfully unaware of the human drama unfolding around her. What about Hope? If my father hurt her to manipulate me, does that mean? It means Hope is the bravest little survivor I've ever treated, Victoria said firmly. Whatever happened to her, she fought through it. Just like you fought through everything life has thrown at you. And now you both get to heal together, in safety, surrounded by people who actually care. The tension in Penny's small body slowly began to ease. She looked back at Marcus, studying his face as if searching for any sign of doubt or deception. But his expression was open, honest, and utterly determined. Okay, Penny finally whispered. Okay, I'll stay. I want to stay. Marcus pulled her into a hug, careful and gentle, as if afraid she might break. Thor, who had been lying quietly nearby throughout the entire conversation, stood and patted over, pressing against both of them. Victoria felt tears stinging her own eyes at the sight. There's one more thing, Margaret said, pulling papers from her briefcase. Mr. Hartfield, the police located Gerald Brennan this morning. He was attempting to flee to Canada. He's been arrested on charges of stalking, trespassing, and criminal harassment. With the evidence we've gathered, plus testimony about his treatment of Penny, he'll likely face significant prison time. Relief washed through the room like a wave. The immediate threat was over. So it's really done? Penny asked, her voice muffled against Marcus's shoulder. He can't come back? He can't come back, Marcus confirmed. You're safe now. We're all safe. 3 months later, Victoria pulled up to the Hartfield estate with a special delivery. She found Marcus, Penny, and Thor in the garden, where Penny had convinced Marcus to help her plant a vegetable garden. They were both covered in dirt, laughing as Thor attempted to help by digging enthusiastic holes in completely wrong locations. Dr. Victoria, Penny called out, waving excitedly. "Come see what we're planting. We're going to grow tomatoes and carrots and—" She stopped, noticing the carrier in Victoria's hands. "Is that—" "Hope is officially cleared for discharge," Victoria announced with a grin. "She's fully healed and ready to come home." Penny's shriek of joy could probably be heard across 3 counties. She ran to Victoria, carefully taking the carrier and peering inside at the now healthy calico kitten. Hope meowed indignantly at the movement, then began purring when she recognized Penny's scent. "Welcome home, Hope," Penny whispered, tears of happiness streaming down her face. "Welcome to our real home," Marcus stood, brushing dirt from his jeans, a far cry from the suit-clad businessman who'd first called Victoria in desperation about his aggressive Rottweiler. He looked younger somehow, lighter, despite the gray hair and the lines around his eyes. "Thank you," he said to Victoria, the words carrying weight beyond just the kitten's treatment. "For everything." "Thank you," Victoria replied, watching as Penny carefully opened the carrier and Hope stepped out, immediately investigating her new environment with typical feline curiosity. Thor approached cautiously, sniffing the tiny cat with gentle interest. Hope, either brave or foolish, batted at his nose with a soft paw. Thor's tail began wagging. "Looks like they'll get along fine," Marcus observed with amusement. "Of course they will," Penny said confidently. "We're all family now. That's what families do. They take care of each other." Victoria stayed for dinner that evening, a casual affair of pasta and salad that Penny had helped prepare. The formal dining room remained unused. They ate in the kitchen instead, with Thor lying under the table accepting forbidden scraps and Hope exploring her new domain with fearless determination. As the sun set over the estate, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Victoria watched this unlikely family she'd helped bring together. A billionaire who'd learned that love was more valuable than any business deal. A child who'd discovered that home wasn't a place, but a feeling of safety and belonging. A Rottweiler who'd proven that aggression was sometimes just loyalty with nowhere to go. And a tiny kitten whose broken leg had somehow helped heal broken hearts. "What are you thinking?" Marcus asked, noticing Victoria's contemplative expression. "I'm thinking about how strange life is," Victoria replied. 3 months ago, you called me because Thor was out of control. Now look at you. A family. All because a dog knew there was danger and tried to warn you, and a little girl was brave enough to trust strangers with a kitten she couldn't save alone. It wasn't just bravery, Penny interjected wisely. It was Thor. He made me feel safe when I was scared. He knew I needed help before I even knew it myself. Marcus reached over and scratched behind Thor's ears. He's always been perceptive. I just wasn't listening, but I am now. As Victoria drove home that night, she reflected on the question she always asked herself. Why had she become a veterinarian? The answer used to be simple. She loved animals and wanted to help them. But cases like this reminded her that helping animals often meant helping the humans who loved them. Thor hadn't needed medication or surgery. He'd needed someone to understand what he was trying to communicate. And in doing so, Victoria had helped save not just 1 life, but 4. The following week, the local newspaper ran a small story about Marcus Hartfield's adoption of a young girl, praising his philanthropic spirit. The article mentioned nothing about Gerald Brennan's plot, nothing about Thor's protective behavior, nothing about an injured kitten that had served as an unlikely bridge between a traumatized child and a grieving man. But Victoria kept a copy of that article anyway, tucking it into her files alongside Hope's medical records, because she knew the truth, that sometimes the most extraordinary rescues weren't planned or orchestrated by humans at all. Sometimes they happened because a loyal dog loved his owner enough to sense danger, and a brave girl loved a tiny kitten enough to risk everything. And sometimes, the thing that seemed like the biggest problem, an aggressive Rottweiler nobody could tame, turned out to be the greatest gift, bringing together exactly the right people at exactly the right time. 6 months after that first desperate phone call, Victoria received a wedding invitation. Marcus and a woman named Jennifer, a teacher he'd met at Penny's new school, were getting married. The invitation included a hand-drawn picture from Penny showing 4 figures, 2 adults, 1 child, 1 large dog, and 1 small cat, all holding hands, or paws, in front of a house labeled Home. At the bottom, in Penny's careful handwriting, was a note. Thank you for saving hope. You saved all of us. Victoria hung that picture in her clinic, where it remained for years, a reminder that healing came in many forms, and that sometimes the smallest acts of compassion could ripple outward in ways nobody could predict. She never forgot the lesson Thor had taught everyone who'd been paying attention. That love, loyalty, and the courage to trust could transform even the most broken circumstances into something beautiful. And in the Hartfield house, where laughter now echoed through halls that had been silent for too long, a little girl slept peacefully each night, with a Rottweiler at the foot of her bed and a calico cat curled on her pillow, safe in the knowledge that she was finally, truly home.